Hello guys and welcome to yet amazing video on .NET tips and tricks. And today I am going to show you some of the secret tips and tricks that have been added behind the scenes for switch case that is going to totally rock you out. Well, I am pretty sure many of these features you have not seen before and they can move your productivity and code optimization to the next level. So be with me, watch till the end of this video and this is going to be an amazing session. So before we move forward, if you are coming for the first time here, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss anything from us. So let's begin. So again, this is a very standard boilerplate code. We just added one class over here. Rest of the code is pretty simple, no changes over here, and you can get the complete code from the GitHub. Link is in the description. So let's consider a very simple statement, very simple business flow. We have to give rating to a student based on his marks. If the marks are above 90, we have to give a rating of super. If it is more than 80, we have to say, okay, very good. And likewise, other ratings along the path. So let's start. So what I'm going to do is I am going to define a simple function over here. Alright, so this is a pretty simple function. It returns a string and we need to pass in object that will hold student marks. So let's create the object first. Alright, so this is pretty simple. There's an object called student result that has just two properties, student name and marks. And we are considering marks as an integer number. So in an ideal world, if we have to define a rating, it would not be possible directly using the switch. We would have to write something like this. And let me pass the object first. Alright, so we have to write something like this, and let me just put it here as well. And if you see in this code, particularly we can omit some part of here. We can remove that as well because that will be covered in the next set. Alright, so even then this cannot be converted directly to a switch statement. The reason being there are conditional operators over here and switch used to work since the very start based on the value types from value over there. It might be a enum, it might be a string, it might be a number or whatever it is. But there are some changes. So let's just convert this first to a switch statement and then we will proceed on conditional part. So the ideal way we will write this is something like this. Let me create an object first here as well. Or let's call it rating. In case it is 90, then my rating would be very good. Alright, and we have the break statement. Now if this condition would work fine pretty well in cases the mark is exactly 90. But what about if it is 91 or 92? In that case, we have to apply sort of a conditional operator where the number is more than 90. Well, this is the old school. The new features enable us to write more flexible statements and conditions. Let's see how. We can write something like this. Alright, and we can use the same rating, same number over here, and what we can do is we can just comment this out. So if you see over here, what we have done is basically we have defined the marks over here as a variable, and we are doing conditional checks on this mark. Now there are further optimizations that are possible over here that we'll do in a moment from now. But anyway, just to make the things clear, what we have done is we have taken a variable, and once the variable is there, then we have applied a condition using the when keyword. We have applied a condition using a when keyword. When the marks is more than 90, rating is very good. Well, this looks good, but this seems to be a bit lengthy. Can we shorten it? Of course, we can shorten it. And the simplest way could be something like this. And let me put the rating over here as very good. So if you see, we have just removed this part, and the case, it refers to the number that is under consideration, and we can just define directly using the conditional operator that should be true. So in this case, if the marks are more than 80, then this case would become valid and we can just give the rating as good. Now we will move into a few more optimizations, but let's just complete this case, and we need to have a default statement. And let me give a rating over here. All right, and I'm sorry students, you failed if you are less than 80. I'm so sorry. All right, and we return the rating. Perfect. This was fine. So this is again, I think, defined in C# 7.3 or 8. I'm not so sure, but it is an old feature that we can define sort of these conditions over here, which is like way outside what we have been learning for using the static values. Anyways, so now we have a totally different way of writing the switch case statements, and actually it's just switch. There are no cases anymore that we define over there. Case as in keyword, but again, that's why it's called switch expression, and it's pretty simple to write. So many of you would have been using sort of lambdas, like the arrow functions that we have. We define a lambda over there. On the right side we have the expression that gives the value. So it's more or less similar, and what we need to do is we need to pick the value on which we want to do a switch. In this case it would be mark, then it will followed by a switch statement, and then we have the braces. That's it. Now just rewriting what we have written above, we can simply let me just uncomment this as well. So what we can do is we can just define 90, which is the value that needs to be checked, followed by an arrow, and then we can have the condition that we want to achieve, rating equal to very good. That looks good, and we close it. But we have to store this value as well, so I will just do something like this. So we have taken the field where we want to apply the switch statement, then we have defined the value that needs to be checked, and then we have set the condition. So this is a conditional part. All right, now let's move to the next condition, and the next condition that we saw above was marks more than 90. Well, we just write simply like this. Just remove the case, remove the break, and put an arrow, and then define the condition that you want to do. This is again going to be very good. All right, and then I can just put in the other values as well. Now, how do we define the default? Well, many of you guys might already knew, and defining the default is pretty easy. We just use an underscore discard operator, and that will serve as your default implementation. and we will do, I'm sorry guys for failing you again, and perfect. So if you see over here, just before we move, alright, so what we have done so far, we have the old school way of writing the switch list statements. Then we applied the conditional part in those statements. Then we remove the case, we remove the break, we converted into a switch expression. Now this is actually a very powerful tool, and I am going to show you in next 2 minutes how powerful this tool can be. Let's just quickly consider a case and add a complexity over here. The decision that we are making over here, that depends on two variables, not one. That depends on the student name as well, and based on that we have to take the decision whether we show or move into a particular flow or not. You might be thinking, how is that possible? Well, let me just quickly show you. So again, I'll apply the same funda. I'll apply the same thing over here, applying the switch expression. But in this case, I will not pass in the maths part. I will not pass in the maths property, but rather I'll pass in the complete object over here. My bad. Closing this. Now we are going to access something that is called property access inside switch expression. Yes, that's called property access inside switch expression. And how do we access property? Well, we just put a brace over here and you will see IntelliSense. So we have both the properties that we can pass in. Now let's say if the marks of the student is 95, or rather more than 95, and student name is cheater. Well, in this case, what we do, we define and for the rest of the conditions we can simply apply the default logic that we have been using. All right, so I'll just Alright, so what do we have over here? So if you see, when we wanted to access any of the property, we have to apply a similar process. What we can do is we can pass in a maths object of the user. Any property can be passed in because we are applying the switch on the reference type object. It's not a value type. So based on that, we can use any of the properties. We can apply filter, conditions, whatever we want to do, those we can do over here. And based on that, again, the same expression based approach to define the operation, and this works fine. So again, guys, I have seen a lot of code where people have been putting if, else if, and condition combination, which made the code very dirty. This is a very neater and concise way of how you define your code, how you can write with a very good readability and maintainability. And it explains itself like, okay, the marks are more than 95 and the student name is cheater. In that case, define this rating. So all those conditions can be very easily defined and code is very much maintainable, believe me. Well, this so far covers a lot of ground, but there is one more trick left in my hat that I'm just going to show you in next few moments. So just bear with me and see that part as well. So for that part, let's consider a case that so we have converted these property types, we have checked those. Now let's take a case where the object that you are going to pass, you have to let's say validate the type of the object what it is being passed. And just to elaborate that, let me add a class over here. Now this class derives from student result, and it has one property, bonus marks. Now what we have to do, so just let me put it over here. This is our property access. And the next part that we are going to see is in case if we need to check if the object that is being passed is a type, is a subset, or let's say a particular type is, or let's say is, or let's say if it is of a particular type, how can we do that? Well, this object that we are passing in this method is a student result, but we can of course pass in a bonus result as well, and most of these checks would pass. But let's say we want to check the bonus result. If it is a bonus result, we wanted to print or result, or let's say set the rating to bonus something. So how can we do that? Well, that is also pretty easy. We just do this bonus result, we define a name of the variable, and we do this, and you see over here we got the bonus marks. So this is very safe way of typecasting it. It will go into this condition only if the bonus only if the type of object that is passed in is a type of bonus result. So otherwise you would have to check something like this: if student result is bonus result, or checking the type or something like that. So this all has been removed, and you can very easily validate. You can do the safe type checks and also use the object within the same line in a very concise, smart and readable way. So this is again a very powerful tool that can be applied in a lot of day-to-day programming problems and situations where you want to have that. You don't need to have separate if blocks or separate switch conditions. Within a same set of code, you can do and define a lot of things and have your code cleaned up as well. Well, this is called a declarative approach. So my bad if some of the names doesn't match up, but yeah, I'm trying to see, like I'm trying to recall what I remember, and based on that I'm just putting it out. You can of course check it out on the MSDN website. It should be available over there. Now coming back, one last trick in my hat that I wanted to show now. So let's say that is fine. We have taken the cases where different properties are being checked, or if the object type is being checked, there are different conditions that are being checked. Now what if there are different objects altogether that needs to be checked on this condition? Well, that seems to be a probable case, and just let me build up some data for it, and then we can continue and discuss that. All right, so what do we have over here? So what we have done is we have defined a set of 3 colors as an enum. Again, we are not limited to enum, but you can actually use any of the values, be it a string, number, whatever you want to use. And based on that, we pass 2 colors, be it red or blue or yellow or whatever it is, or a combination of that. We pass in to this method, and this method returns a composite color. For example, if you pass in red and yellow, it should return you as orange. Now, the thing to be considered over here is like we are going to solve this problem using a switch expression where we're using two different properties or objects. Again, it's not a part of a common or composite object, but rather two different properties that we are going to pass in, two different objects we are going to pass in. And how we are going to do that? Well, let's just use return statement, and or let's do it like this: composite color equal to. And how do we define the case? Like if we want to do a switch expression, we first define the variable or the property or the object actually that is being passed in, and then we define a switch, and then we define the conditions. So in this case there are two variables that are being passed in. And how we are going to solve that? Well, it's pretty easy. We are going to use the tuple approach. First color, second color, switch. And how we are going to check that? We are going to check via red, and if it is yellow, in this case we are going to return orange. Isn't it interesting, guys? We just define, and let me complete this. Yes. And we can define or check any of these values. So there would be n number of combinations. It's actually two different or distinct parameters that we are passing in, and based on that we can apply a switch. This is a very powerful feature where you have to take conditional statements. It can remove all your messy if-elseif code into a switch expression based statements, which is very simple to read and write and manage. And the beauty of this is, like, if I try to repeat the same statements again, it is going to give me an error that the value is already covered. So that is pretty good. All right, so what we can do something like this, taking care of both the cases. Either way we pass it, it should return an orange. And if we pass in red and blue, in that case it should return, let's say, violet. And for all other cases, just return not defined. So guys, I hope it. So that's it, guys, for the switch case statements. Again, I am pretty sure many of you guys might not have seen these or applied these in your day-to-day programming. This is because I interview a lot of people and many of them don't know about this. And based on that understanding, I'm making this assumption. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, if you guys learned something new and this seems to be helpful, smash that thumbs up button. That is definitely going to motivate us. Subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon if you have not already. There are more videos coming in on this theme. I have that planned. If you're watching at a later point, those would be available on the cards on the top right and in the description. So just let me know if you face any problem, any troubles. If you have used this pattern, any of these patterns, just let me know via comment section if you have used that, if you want to use or you find it interesting. And any queries, suggestion, whatever you have, just let us know via comment section and we will get back to you. Hope you liked the video. We will be back. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.